Welcome everyone, thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made this industrial rustic pipe fitting wall mount shelf. It's very easy and very customizable. You can make it to whatever size you want, so stay tuned. First things first, let's cut the shelves. I make these out of 1x12, which is 3/4 and 11 1/4 inch, and these are 18 inches based on what the customer wanted. So just set your fence to that or whatever length you're going to want and get started. Alright, once you got the cuts done, let's go drill the holes for the pipes. I use a spade bit to cut the holes, but you could also use a hole saw. And because my pipe is 3/4 inch diameter, it's technically really closer to 1 inch outside diameter. So you're going to want to cut a 1 1/8 inch hole here. So as you can see here, I have this board here with a pre-drilled hole. That's technically actually a sample unit I built for a customer, and I ended up using it as scrap because I didn't like the way it turned out. So I use these holes to line up exactly where I want all of my other holes. It's kind of like a jig for me. But because you're not going to have this board unless you make it, I will show you later how I just did it by hand measuring it out. But here, I'm just drilling through, almost through on one side, just enough to poke through the tip of the spade, but not enough to cut all the way through, and then I flip it and I drill out the other side. This will really help prevent tear out on the other side of the board. Also having some scraps underneath, some dunnage, whatever you want to call it, is also going to help with tear out. Grab your ruler and find the center of the board and give it a mark. Then offset just a little bit, so that way when you go to install the fittings later, the flange will be able to actually clear the outside edge of the shelf so it can mount against the wall. Also, I try to get it as close to the end as possible, this way I can maximize my available shelf space. In factoring the 1 1/8 inch hole you're going to drill, you're going to want to space the center of your spade about 1.5 inches off the end. Okay, now just sand. Start at 120 at the most and always work your way up through all the grits and do at least 220 if not more. It really depends on how finished you want these to look. If you want the best finish, you're going to need to go as high as possible with your sanding grits. Let's skip ahead. I don't want to bore you with the sanding. If you are interested, leave me a comment down below and I'll make a sanding video just dedicated to that. I am using pine here because it is easy to come by, it's also affordable and eco-friendly, as well as being easy to work with. And because I'm using pine, and because it's very soft, I generally always pre-stain before I do any staining on these projects. If not, it's going to come out very blotchy and very uneven. Now, if that's the look you're going for, then you don't need to pre-stain. But I generally like to have a smooth, even finish across my projects. Speaking of, if you have watched any of my other videos, then you've seen me pre-stain. It's a pretty simple process. Just wipe it on, wipe off any excess, let it dry for an hour or two. After the pre-stain is cured, let's go ahead and stain. Like pre-staining, just wipe it on, then wipe it off. The longer you leave the stain on the wood, the darker the finish is going to come out. So keep that in mind when you're doing the project. Next, let's grab all the pipe fittings. Like I mentioned before, these are all 3/4 inch diameter fittings, and I use 4 flanges, 2 elbows, 12 couplings, 6 1-inch or close nipples, 4 4-inch nipples, and 6 8-inch nipples. Now, don't worry if you didn't have a pen and paper ready to go. I'll write it all down in the description below. So as you can see, I'm using acetone to clean the fittings initially. It gets a lot of the grease and grime off, and I'm just using a sponge to wipe it on and scrub it on, and then using a towel to wipe it off. This is just regular acetone you can buy at any big box store. After the acetone, I do use mineral spirits sometimes if the fittings are really extra dirty. These are generally pretty clean. So at this point, I'm just going to use some soapy water to give it one final scrubbing. Now you may ask yourself, why am I going through all this trouble if I'm just going to end up painting them in the end? Well, the reason why is you need a nice clean surface for the paint to adhere to. So speaking of paint, let's move on to that. For the paint, I just use a nice high performance enamel that you can generally get at any big box store or online. Before handling the fittings, you're going to want to wait at least a couple of hours to let the enamel dry. In order to assemble, grab 2 1-inch fittings and 4 couplings. Thread 1 1-inch fitting into one coupling and 1 1-inch fitting into another coupling. Then, place the shelf over the exposed threads of these 1-inch fittings, and thread the other 2 couplings over the 1-inch fittings. After that, grab 2 8-inch fittings and 2 flanges and thread those on. Those are going to be your feet. Next, just grab another 2 8-inch fittings and 2 couplings and thread those on. Then, repeat the process for each shelf going all the way up. Finally, just install the remaining fittings in this order: 4-inch fitting, elbow, 4-inch fitting, flange. Do this for both sides. Make sure to orientate the flanges towards the offset side, that way they can contact the wall when you go to install it. And that's it, fully assembled. I appreciate you watching. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up and a subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate. If you didn't like it, let me know in the comment section what I can do better for next time. Thanks again, and take care.